I was in the hospital recovering from surgery. My wife came home to find our porch furniture gone and a free sign in our yard. Our neighbor said, "Thought you were moving." When I showed him the security footage, he just shrugged and said, "You should have locked it up." But one thing he forgot to hide proves everything. This happened about 2 weeks ago, and I still don't really know how to explain it to people without getting angry. I had surgery on a Thursday. Nothing insane, but serious enough that I had to stay at the hospital for several days to recover. I wasn't allowed to move around much, and they were worried about infection, so they kept me there longer than expected. My wife was splitting her time between working her nursing shifts and staying with me in the hospital. Basically, our house was empty for a few days. When my wife went home for a few hours to grab some things, she called me. First thing she said was, "Where's the porch furniture?" At first I thought maybe the wind blew something around or one of her brothers picked it up for some reason. But then she said, "There's a sign here. It says free, please take." That's when I knew something was off. The porch had a table for chairs, 2 potted plants, and a glider bench that used to belong to my dad. I restored it last summer. Spent weekends sanding it down, repainting, even fixed a busted wheel. I engraved my dad's initials on a small metal plate and screwed it into the bottom of the bench. I never told anyone I did that.
It was just for me.
We live in a quiet neighborhood in New Jersey, mostly older folks. Our neighbor, Doug, has always been weird, kind of nosy, always has something to say about our lawn, our trash bins, whatever. But we stayed friendly enough to keep the peace. After the call, I told my wife to check the cameras. We have a Ring doorbell, but more importantly, I'd hidden another camera inside a birdhouse above the porch. I put it in after a couple of package thefts.
Nobody knew about that one.
She checked the Ring first, but Doug walked behind the line of sight for most of it. But the birdhouse cam caught it all.
Doug.
Rolling a dolly across our lawn. Loading up the table and chairs onto a trailer. His teenage son following behind him, carrying the flower pots. It looked like they knew exactly what they were doing. They even wore gloves. Made 2 trips, then drove off. The whole thing took maybe 25 minutes. My wife marched right over to his house. I was still in the hospital, but she kept me on the phone while she talked to him. She said, "Doug, did you take our porch furniture?" And Doug just stared at her for a second and said, "I thought you were moving." There was a sign that said free. She told him that sign wasn't ours. That someone must have put it there. He shrugged and said, "You should have locked it up."
No apology.
No offer to return anything. Just total indifference, like it wasn't even a big deal. When I got home 3 days later, I filed a police report. I also brought out the footage from both cameras, along with pictures of the glider, including one I had on my phone that showed the metal tag with my dad's initials. Doug must have thought he could lie his way out of it. He told the cops he thought we were moving. Said he figured the stuff was trash. That anyone could have left the sign. That maybe someone else put it there, and he just took advantage. But I asked the officer if they could check Doug's backyard. Sure enough, the glider was still there, right on his back patio. When they flipped it over, they found the tag, still screwed in. My dad's initials right there in plain sight. That's when everything changed. The officer brought Doug outside. I stayed on the sidewalk just watching. Doug looked at the glider like it had grown teeth. He didn't say anything at first. Just stood there while the cop pointed at the tag. I could hear him mumble something like, "Didn't even notice that." The officer asked him again where he got the furniture. Doug said, "I thought it was trash. It was just sitting out there." The cop looked back at me and said, "You have video showing him putting up the sign?" I shook my head.
No.
The sign was already there when my wife got home. But I do have him hauling everything away. With gloves. With a dolly. That's not how you grab trash. Doug finally said, "Look, if it means that much to you, take it back." He said it like I was being the unreasonable one. I told the officer, "I don't want just the glider. He took everything. He planned this." Doug snapped a little then. "It's not like I broke into your house, man." That's when I knew he really thought this was fine. Like, if it's outside, it's fair game. The officer didn't arrest him. Said it was a civil matter unless we could prove intent or show damage over a certain amount. But he did write up a full report and told Doug to return everything or face a small claims case. My wife and I didn't want the furniture back anymore. Just the glider. The rest felt tainted. But then Doug did something that made it worse. 2 days after all that, we woke up to find our mailbox knocked over. Not kicked. Hit with something heavy. We checked the camera again. It was the same dolly he used before. Just rolled right over. Took one swing. Walked off. We filed another report. This time the officer seemed more annoyed than helpful. Said there wasn't clear footage of his face, so they couldn't charge him without better evidence. So we decided to handle it differently. I made flyers. Simple ones. Just 2 screenshots. One of Doug hauling our stuff, and one of the glider on his patio with the tag circled. I added a line. Not everything free belongs to you. My wife and I walked around the block and slipped them into every mailbox. We didn't say anything online. We didn't call him out by name. But the photos were clear. Within a week, Doug wasn't waving anymore. His wife stopped gardening out front. His son walked the dog on a different street. One neighbor came by with cookies and said, "We always knew something was off about him. Glad someone finally called it out." Doug hasn't apologized. Not once. But now, every time he steps out of his house, he has to see me sitting on that glider. A few weeks went by. Things stayed quiet. Too quiet, honestly. Then one morning, my wife got a letter. No return address. Handwritten. Inside was a single sheet of paper, no signature. Just one sentence. "Maybe next time you should keep your mouth shut." That was it. No name. No threats. But we both knew who it was from. I called the police again. Gave them the letter, the envelope, everything. They took it seriously enough to file it, but without fingerprints or handwriting proof, they said it was not actionable. Basically, they couldn't do anything unless it escalated. And I had a feeling it would. So I took a day off work. Rented a cheap GPS tracker from a security place an hour away. I watched a couple of videos online, learned how to mount it under a car. I waited until late that night, around 2 a.m., and crept over to Doug's truck. Stuck the tracker under the bumper. Fastened tight. For the next week, I monitored him from my laptop. Work, grocery store, school pickup. Same route every day. Until Saturday. That morning, around 6 a.m., he drove out to a storage facility about 10 minutes from town. Stayed for a while. Long enough to load or unload something. I followed the address myself the next day.
Just drove by to see it.
Nothing unusual about the place. But something told me that's where our other furniture was. I called the police again. Told them I believed stolen property was at that storage unit. I gave them everything, the tracker data, the video, the photos. They said I'd need to take it to small claims or hire a lawyer to push further.
So I did.
The lawyer I found was young, but sharp. Said the value of everything was more than enough to push a claim. He also said, if you're lucky, maybe we can get a subpoena for the storage unit records. Turns out we didn't even need to go that far. 3 days before our first court date, Doug panicked. He showed up at our front door alone. No warning. Just knocked, holding an envelope. I opened the door, but didn't let him in. "Look," he said, not making eye contact. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." I didn't say anything. He handed me the envelope and said, "This is for the furniture. All of it." Inside was a check. Made out for $2,500. I looked at it, then at him. He said, "We can call off the court stuff, right?" My wife stepped beside me. She looked at him and said, "This isn't about money. You know that, right?" He didn't answer. Just walked off. We didn't cash the check. It's still in a drawer, under some old takeout menus. I don't really know why I kept it. Maybe to remind myself what people will do when they think no one's looking. And now, every time I sit on that glider, I still wonder what Doug thought he was taking because it wasn't just furniture.